recognition is a huge part of it, and it costs nothing to do, not monetarily and really very little time. It's just a shift in thinking. But I think the other part of that is cultivating a mentorship mindset to understand that, yes, there are formal mentors that people can access, and I believe every board should. But I also believe that we need to celebrate the person down the hall and all the different ways that we are propped up from the people that we connect with, whether it's for a one-off or if it's something more meaningful and long-term.
There are certain people that you meet and come across who, when you look at their life, they're just looking at them makes you tired because of how busy and how active they are in certain areas. And Noa Daniel is one of these people. When you look at her kind of resume and just all the things that she has going on in her life, specifically in support of educators, teachers, and students, it's pretty remarkable. She's a longtime educator, teacher at York Region School Board in Ontario, but really has been just doing a lot of very creative and really thoughtful work over the time. Her work around mentorship is certainly something that is not much needed. And, she's done a great job in kind of getting that kind of organized and rolling and moving forward. And her building outside the blocks concept for pedagogy is also amazing as well. She's written a book, she's done podcasts. And again, you list all the things that she's done and you go, wow, this woman is impressive. And so it was a treat and a delight to spend half an hour or so talking with Noa and learning a little bit more about how and why she does what she does. That's always an interesting perspective to take. And that's the road we went down in our conversation, just learning a little bit more about her passions and all the great work that she has done and is doing and will continue to do. So enjoy my conversation today with Noa Daniel. Okay, Noa, I don't even know where to start because I look at your list of things you're involved with. And how do you describe yourself? Let me start with that. Like, what's the best way you describe yourself?
I describe myself as a generalist, but I'm a really proud and committed educator who understands the classroom outside the physical walls of school. And everything I do, all of my hobbies are about education.
And you have a lot. So you've written books, you have podcasts, you have a couple of interesting services that you've done. So again, and you're currently in the classroom at York,
In New York.
York Region.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. I don't even know where to, like I said, I don't really know where to start. So maybe I'll start with a mentoring piece, which I think is a really fascinating and much needed aspect of education today. So tell us about how and what that mentoring looks like.
I had a really profound mentor when I was still in independent schools. And when I came to York Region 8 years ago, I was invited a few months earlier onto Voice Ed Radio to what was called On Ed Mentors. Derek Rodenizer was hosting it. And I was like, wow, this is so cool. And I was really into the idea of mentoring pre-service teachers. But through the experience, we were learning a lot from each other. And I said, guys, I have an idea. Why can't we take On Ed mentors to the world and give teachers mentorship opportunities whenever they need them? And they're like, okay, Noa, go do that. And of course I did. So I was really lucky at the beginning to partner with somebody who had the digital infrastructure. And then as things evolved and we realized that we had an idea that nobody had, where people could access mentorship at any stage of their careers on their own terms, and not just the one-to-one mentorship, but through the show, which I ended up hosting for 5 years. And then eventually through these different mechanisms that we created based on the express need of teachers. And then last year we got to actually write a chapter about it. It's hard not to be engaged in and excited about really like amazing ways to cultivate mentorship, leadership, learning in all sorts of boards, but really for individuals. And I think that's something that really drives me still. And I'm now working a lot with the International Mentoring Association to think through some of the next steps for the mentoree and the best way to serve the community.
So tell us maybe some always good success in your journey.
Oh, I have so many success stories, but I think like ultimately my greatest success is that I created an approach to teaching that became the name of my consultation practice. And it's called Building Outside the Blocks because I take the fixed things in education, whether it's inside the classroom with the curriculum or inside boards when I work with boards or communities, and I find the opportunities that kind of reach beyond them. So when I say like that my work helps to cultivate skill and autonomy and community and connection, my students leave their time with me with a better sense of who they are as well as developed skills. And I'm able to do that in all the places that I apply these projects and this learning. So figuring out that building outside the blocks was like actually plausible and that who I was made sense sometimes was just really the greatest accomplishment. But finding a way to teach students, all students on their own terms, that's probably the greatest thing I've done.
I guess when I think about what I've been privileged to experience over my career and in the last 20 so years, because of access to online communities and places and people who have, just make up just the vast number of people who have had influences on me. I think about contrast that with a teacher who is in a profession that's just naturally isolating and can be very lonely and challenging. And so the need for mentorship is very great. And yet there aren't very many super intentional structures that exist within school boards to address that. I mean, you're definitely addressing a need. I guess, I kind of want to probe more into exactly like how that works and how you get the message out. Cause I feel like, man, there's teachers out there right now who are probably don't even know you exist, can't find a way to connect to anybody, and could so much use something that you're offering.
Probe away, but I mean, we had created this community where anybody could sign up to be a mentor and anybody could sign up to be a mentee, or like me, are signed up as both mentor and mentee, which we hope every teacher gets to experience, where they feel capable and able to give even if they're in a learning stance. I have maintained this space as free. The team that I work with, Christine and Terry, that's been a really important key point. But we had, I've been paying out of pocket for all of the things that we do. And you get to a point where you are really lucky to have people who offer services that other people and even boards are willing to pay for. So when we rolled out Impact, which is a 3-part learning experience with a proposed agenda that evolves based on the needs of the people who are taking this Impact experience, you really you get to pay the mentor, which is really important because they work very hard to create a sustainable community in this short time, but also to create resources that actually meet people where they are. So when de-streaming was happening, we did a lot of that work first with English teachers and then science teachers. We've done a lot of work related to literacy when the Right to Read report came out, and there was all of the challenges in dealing with implementing structured literacy. So we were able to be responsive. One of the great challenges has been people who are disconnected who sign up in the community. So for me, I've had to do some apologizing of recent, and that's where we
Mm.
hit pause. People sign up to be mentors enthusiastically, and sometimes they don't respond. So somebody is vulnerable and they ask, "Hey, I'm reaching out because of your
Mm.
science. Can you connect?" And then you get a letter from somebody that says they're unresponsive. And then you feel awful because you wanted to create this self-directed place. So that's one of my leadership conundrums really is how do I move from here, keep this space open for anybody to access, continue to build community here while focusing more on services so that we can maintain some of the control over what happens. Cause I don't want to disappoint people. I don't want to create spaces that people aren't showing up to, but I also really believe in this. So I've been sitting in these meetings for the International Mentoring Association, listening to people across and beyond education talking about mentorship and really thinking through how we can leverage this. And every single state and every single province has different mentorship requirements. But for example, here in Ontario, we have the new teacher induction experience through program through NTIP, and your province has a different program. And through Learning Forward, which is the board that I'm on in Ontario, they've done a study and looked at the different induction programs, and they're all different. And now, people are talking about changing back to 1 year for pre-service. So there's a lot of issues and there's a lot of movement there. And originally, our focus was on pre-service. We wanted teachers to have mentors in their pocket kind of before they needed them to help them
Sure.
navigate, especially the gap from the faculty into contract teaching. But we've also done a lot of work for people who are going through transitions and, a new classroom is a transition, a new grade level is a transition. And so I really continue to dream to have that space. And we're trying to figure out how to do that without feeling like we weren't really making an impact. So we're at an impasse that I believe we will figure out and bridge at some point.
You make me think about a problem that I don't know that I've really thought about specifically until you kind of addressed it. And that is, like you said, the problem you described was having mentors who maybe didn't respond. And then you have somebody vulnerable who didn't. So there's so many things in education that people have to volunteer and they're not really mandated. They're part of their work. So they serve on this committee or they say they're going to do this thing. But again, we spread people so thin that it's difficult. It's difficult for even well-intentioned people to do all the things they do. And then there's somebody like yourself who is obviously very driven and very committed to this stuff and wants to see this work. And yet you're working with people who, and I don't want to say they're not as committed to you, which that might be the right description. But again, they're spread thin and you're trying to keep the expectations somewhat low, but at the same time, some expectations that you will, sort of support this work. I guess all of that, I'm just painting a picture of a common scenario that I believe exists all across school boards across North America and beyond, that we want so many things to happen and we think of all the extracurricular things that are happening in schools and so forth. And yet, like, how do we as leaders, I guess, help frame these opportunities for people to serve so that they do stay committed to whatever degree that is, and without, as they continue to do the main work that they've been paid to do, that is part of their job description. It's a very poorly worded question, but I'm hoping that spurs some thoughts around, yeah, how do we, because you have so much of that going on in the work that you do.
Well, I have several answers to that, but the first one has to do with how we address mentorship. And if you are a mentor, you don't get certification. You don't even get a little piece of paper that says congratulations for being a mentor. So if we're going to ask people to do things and we are not going to celebrate it, even informally, I don't enjoy that part of it. I've been an NTIP mentor for 3 years and I was in NTIP because I came to the board. I've seen both sides. I've offered free ideas and nobody's interested in talking to me about it. But I really believe that it's actually low hanging fruit. I actually think it's one of the easier things that we can do.
Yeah.
And part of that is just in recognizing it. Teachers deserve recognition for the work that they put in, especially when it's beyond their classroom. So I run 2 clubs. I don't expect anybody outside my building to know that I do that, but I put that on a resume because it's an important contribution that I'm making to my school. I don't know how people do all the things that they do without having the language to attribute it to their leadership and commitment to their work. So I think that recognition is a huge part of it and it costs nothing to do, not monetarily and really very little time. It's just a shift in thinking. But I think the other part of that is cultivating a mentorship mindset to understand that, yes, there are formal mentors that people can access. And I believe every board should create formal mentorship experiences, not just from NTIP to becoming a VP. But I also believe that we need to celebrate the person down the hall and all the different ways that we are propped up from the people that we connect with, whether it's for a one-off or if it's something more meaningful and long-term.
As you were sharing those sort of two solutions, the thought that came to me is that as much as here in Canada, we're very proud of our education system and we really feel that, relative to certainly our neighbors in the South and beyond, that we have a better system, generally speaking. What I will say that we don't do as well as our American counterparts is celebrating teachers. They have things like Teachers of the Year. And I get it. The people sometimes find that those kinds of calling out and, a little bit, exclusive, right? So there's only one team. I get it. Fine. At the same time, I think our sometimes perceived humility as individuals and as cultures means that we don't brag about ourselves, and thus we don't brag about others. And I really do believe, to your point, that we could do better. We could just do way better in terms of celebrating one another. So I just commend you for calling that out as a big thing we need to do.
Thank you, but I mean, I think one of the challenges when we say celebrating, we think of it as much more momentous, and it doesn't have to be that big of a deal. It doesn't need to be like the greatest
Right.
sort of
Yeah,
bad.
yeah. Sure. It's cultural though. Like we just get in the habit of saying, thank you for what you did today. And again, you're right. It doesn't have to be a red carpet affair. We don't have to go to that extent.
Right.
But I just do believe that. And I noticed this as soon as I left public education and went to work for a for-profit company. The glaring difference immediately was the degree to which I would get thanked for doing my job all the time, all the time. I would just do what I was supposed to do, and it was like, "Oh, thank you so much for doing that." That's what you pay me to do. We don't do that nearly enough in education, so I call that out as being something that we all could do better at.
No, I think that's a really good point, and it feels good, It's so funny because andragogy and pedagogy are not as far apart as we sometimes perceive, and we have these great things that we want to
Right.
do for students. Educators
That's
deserve
right.
the same thing. We deserve choice. We deserve to be able to self-direct our time. We deserve to feel like we have self-determination in the things that we want to learn and the way that we pursue them. And it's always ironic when a person like me who writes about student voice doesn't get to change how our voices as educators get seen and valued. And I'd really like to help make that impact. And I think mentorship is a great avenue for that.
And again, it's needed even more so because of the fact that you can spend, all day, 2 days, never see another adult. No one ever says anything to you. And again, as lovely as children are, they're not great for saying thank you to their teachers very often. And, I remember getting a note from a parent about thanking me for whatever. It was like the most littlest thing, but I saved that note as a precious little reminder that somebody was paying attention. Yeah, no, I think that's a big thing. Let me just talk about a few of your other projects as you're going along. So tell me more about your sort of building outside the blocks approach and kind of what that looks like. You mentioned it, but maybe in more detail why you're excited about that as a pedagogical approach.
Sure. So I create these different projects that help students get a sense of who they are while they also develop skills in the curriculum and get kind of into the school culture or class culture of, hey, who gets to present today? And students get to choose the medium that they use. In the last, I guess it's been 10 years since I was first published about this approach in Canadian Teacher magazine. And what I find astounding is that whatever edtech tool doesn't change the premise of a building outside the blocks project because all the project have parameters that meet expectations, whether it's for language or for social studies or for science, but also are cross curricular, also help students build learning skills, and also really help students feel a sense of belonging, not only in the classroom, but inside themselves. And like the card that you were talking about, I've collected data from students for 29 years. And I've evolved my projects based on the different students in my classroom, but I've given them away for free all over the world. And people use them and love them and talk to me about the impact it's made on students. So, regardless of the changes in time, these projects, they work.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you. Two more kind of work related questions. Tell me about you wrote a book. You've written a book. Tell me about your book.
So, are we talking about my children's books? Because
Yes, your children's books, the
okay, so I
church's book.
I wrote Crazy for Canada and Old Timers a really long time ago under my maiden name Schwartz, and I had been doing some ghostwriting for many years. I was never going to go through the publication process again, and I was hired to write a story about a real world event, and I was about to do a TED Talk, and I said to the guys who tried to hire me, "I can't think about it. I'm doing a TED Talk. This is my bucket list item," and I said no. And then the TED Talk got moved from October to February. And I called them back and I'm like, actually, I have an idea for a story. And they told me to run with it. And I wrote Strumming the Wild Turkeys. And I said to them, I know it was supposed to be just for you, but I have 1,000 ideas of what to do with this. Is it okay if I send it to a publisher?" And then EduMatch published it, and I created the website for it, and then I wrote a song that got recorded by a Canadian children's duo. And this is a book that I really believe in, not just because you have this swimming against the stream theme, but also because of the power of music to be transformative. So while I wrote the first book and it was published 4 years ago, I continue to dream to write the whole series because these characters and what's possible with these stories really drive me. And sometimes I let myself write the whole story. I have a whole bunch of different stories that take place in the ranch that this story did take place at, a very real world event that I made into really an avenue for me to talk to students around the world, to read the book, to be able to talk about belonging in meaningful ways.
Yeah, and again, the artwork and is so lovely with it too as well. So,
Yeah, Elena McCarthy is extremely talented. And it's funny because as a teacher, I think it's important for us to be writers and do all the things we ask students to be, but getting the chance to really be fully creative and to be able to direct the art and say, after 6 weeks, "No, you don't quite have Strum yet," and then have her send a whole bunch more and go, "Yes, you nailed it," and then go through each of the characters who are in my mind and see them come to life through these different communication means. She had me create basically a board. I did it in Google Slides of all the different ideas I wanted her to incorporate in each of the characters, and she did that. So getting the song recorded that I wrote, "Different is Good," and then getting to be part of the video and spending a day on the ranch while they recorded this video, and then getting a piece of animation of Strum into the video. It's hard not to get excited about what's possible when you can make a difference using that kind of creative medium and being my whole self. So, as much as I love the classroom, I love the chance to do all sorts of different things outside of it.
yes, and another thing that you've done, you touched on it earlier too, is podcasting. And I believe you said I don't know if I looked at it. Did I see it right that you had like 160 some episodes that you did?
We had a weekly episode for 7 years. For 5 of them, I hosted and produced the show. I gathered educators from across the world. I tried my best to listen to the things that were happening in education and be really responsive to it, and I spent a lot of time preparing for it. And so when Stephen walked away from Voice Ed Radio, and it's actually been acquired, so I'm in different conversations right now, but I didn't know what to do with myself. I would go to a conference and be like, "How do I take in this conference?" Because usually I would go and I'd be like, "There's an episode. I've got to build something from that. Who can I?" And now I'm taking in information without having anywhere to put it. So it's a really interesting skill set to develop. I love to do, moderation of conversations. I love to facilitate. I love to speak, but I miss podcasting. I have to tell you, I was just interviewed recently, and you remember that these skills that you build in having conversations, being able to think on your feet, being able to apply learning from across different areas in education. It's such a wonderful privilege. So getting to talk to you is super fun.
Yeah, and like when you look back, and again, I know again hard to do, but is there an episode or person that you just really remember that just maybe surprised you, wow, or blew you away? Just like something that when you think about all those lists, like there's a name that comes to the top for whatever particular reason. Again, hard to do, but maybe there's something that was like just a little unusual that stands out.
I also hosted a podcast where educators told me like their nostalgic identity and pick me up songs. So those for me, because they were musical conversations on my first podcast, the personal playlist podcast that was my own creation from my project, like I can still tell you people's 3 songs, even though it's been so many years since that show was on. And I had almost 300 episodes of that
Wow.
show. So for On and Mentors, I mean, the learning was profound, gathering people who've never had conversations and being able to not only get them to hear each other, but be able to build out the broader ideas and ramifications of a certain topic or a certain thrust in education. Every one of them was interesting. I really loved the cursive episode because we were looking at cursive not only for learners and learning, but how it brought back certain ideals around what education was that was really interesting. I mean, looking at equity conversations, and I've had many of them, some specifically related to assessment, and I've had authors, very famous, we'll say, quote, edufamous authors on episodes, but hearing the humility of those accomplished educators in conversation with, teachers in the classroom and pre-service teachers, those were really cool. I did monthly episodes where I had pre-service teachers asking questions of a panel of mentors and hearing their burning questions getting asked, outside their pre-service experience. Sometimes, reflecting on the challenges of what it was like to be in a host teacher's classroom or get direction that was against the direction they were getting in the faculty. I mean, all of them were astounding, and getting to be privy not just to the conversation, but the rush of tweeting live while I was on the show. That was just so fun for me and hard, but really a lot of skills that were developed over that time. So I wish I could say that one person stood out, but everybody was memorable. Every episode was a piece of me because I do a lot of research before the shows. I really try to balance panels, getting to navigate for everybody to show up to the things that they committed to, like all of that stuff. Really learning how to write an outline for people to make it as user friendly and accessible as possible to show up to the show and build the resources that I could then tweet out while we were live. There were so many elements to it that was just it was a fantastic experience, and Steven did the audio like, all the audio production every single week, so when we went live, that rush of live, like, I could feel it still, and there's nothing that compares to that.
Listen, I've jumped around to a whole bunch of different things that you've been doing, and just to try to get a somewhat of a sampling of your work. But I'm going to ask you to do a little bit of synthesizing in terms of, all right, so sometimes I frame the question this way. If they're making a highlight video of your career, and you have to pick 3 moments, and I would like these to be moments, 3 moments that you would kind of just best represent your career, what would those 3 moments be? So they could be from many of the things we've talked about today. Again, I know there's other things that you are involved with that we didn't even talk about, but what would the 3 highlight reels that would say that you're most proud of in terms of all the work you've done over the years in education?
So we're talking 29 years. Okay. I think for me, the biggest moments would be becoming a published author in my 3rd year of teaching. That was pretty epic, and getting to, do launches at Indigo and places like that. I would probably say that leaving private school and coming to public school was epic and challenging and humbling. And I would say that getting to write Strum in the Wild Turkeys and have the access to myself and to students to read them the story and tell them the why that is in line with everything that I do, those are 3 really big ones.
Those are pretty good ones. Okay, I know you avoided this when I asked you a question about your favorite episode, but you're not going to be able to avoid this one, and that is to choose one person that you in education that you are most grateful. And I don't want to say most grateful for, because what I like about this question is that sometimes people talk about individuals who there may be other people who are perhaps more important, but just somebody that maybe doesn't get a shout out as often enough, but they realize, again, we talked a little bit about gratitude before, but just somebody that you're grateful for in education.
I think there are so many. I'm gonna say Susan Hopkins, Dr. Susan Hopkins. She runs the Merit Center, and she gave us at the Mentory our first chance to do a consultation and create a mentorship program for them. And Christine Terry and I worked for so long to create something really special that, we continue to be invited back to have conversations around mentorship for the Merit Center and around self-reg, and to discover that mentorship can be a self-regulating activity through her and through our teamwork has been really influential. And I continue to be grateful to Susan and all of her insights and invitations.
So with that, then what about, again, this is, I know, a big part of your work, so you do this, but what advice would you give to, I always think about that 25-year-old teacher, they're in their second or third year and they're, either thinking about, they look at you and think, man, you do a lot of really cool stuff. I'd like to do a lot of really cool stuff too. Or, so what advice might you give them to help them sort of take their work to the next level if they want to, pursue leadership more formally?
So I'm on the leadership mission over position. So I'm not sure that I'm great at advocating for formal leadership, but I'll say just lead in the ways that you find interesting, experiment, get messy with different kinds of leadership and find and forge your path because sometimes it's not there and you have to build it. And don't be afraid of the unknown. Just take that leap and build yourself the I don't know, I guess build yourself the landing strip that you need in order to feel safe to take those risks because teaching can be a whole self experience. And I think that we deserve to bring who we are in the best ways into the classroom. And if we feel confined by it, we won't do our best work. But if we as educators feel seen and valued and get to lead on our own terms, then we'll get to the places that we want to go.
Hey, just as we kind of wind things down a little bit here, you're, again, I don't know how you even consume anything beyond trying to get all the things done you've got on your plate, but what would you say, what are you reading to or listening to for sort of professional growth these days, or even personal growth, I guess?
So I don't often separate personal and professional growth. The better person I am, the better teacher that I am. I'm listening on Audible right now to No Bad Parts, which is by Richard Schwartz, and it's looking at internal family systems. But I'm also like really into James Clear and thinking about, atomic habits and how those things connect. Also, the atomic habits relates to one of my Bob projects, Healthy Start. So it's given me some good ideas about how to evolve it and help students do goal setting and achievement in more methodical ways. So everything I do kind of comes back to teaching.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you too. Like, I've never been one to, have a line of demarcation between now I'm a teacher, now I'm a human, kind of both
Right.
all at the same time. And, but now that said, and again, I can imagine that the answer to this next question is nothing, because how do you even find time? But some people like to have a little break time from all the busy work they're doing and maybe just, I don't know, a little guilty pleasure, I just need, my brain has to just sort of shut down for just a little while. Do you ever let your brain shut down? And if you do, is there anything that you might consume, a binge watch or anything of that nature that helps you in that? Or can you just say, I just don't have time for any of that?
No, I absolutely have time for that. Like, I love hacks and I'm really into like Friends and Neighbors waiting for the Friday drop. Like, I love to binge watch. It helps me sometimes because I'm an introverted extrovert and I just need time to chill. But I also love a good walk in the woods with the dog. Like, those are some of the greatest moments
Yeah.
of my life. So, guilty
Yeah.
pleasures.
You gotta have a little bit of all. I think those are all part of it. Oh, that's wonderful. Now, all right, last question and I'll get you out of here.
Okay.
Um, so where are you actually, so in York region, do you live in York region? And if so, where?
I live 5 minutes from my school. Do you want me to be more specific than that? Oh no, did you go away
All
again?
right. So what I'd love is a sort of a recommendation of a place to visit, or restaurant, could be a park, could be a museum, could be anything in your area that you would recommend people to check out.
Oh, I would go a little bit north of here and go see the Eaton House and walk around. You get a really nice sense of the evolution of people and time and what it means to get away. Those were their country house. But you also get a great view of Seneca and a beautiful walk in the woods. So you even get into two different climate regions while you're in there, which is always kind of wild. Yeah.
Noah, thank you so much for your time. This was fascinating getting to know you, diving a little bit deeper into all of the things you're involved in. You are one busy woman doing a lot of really important work. So thank you and congratulations for your work and continued success. And thanks for taking the time to share a little bit about all the things you're working on today.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate your interest and time.
Thanks.